Welcome back to Pop Dissected. Today, we're going to be talking about Billie Eilish. More specifically, we're going to be exploring what her next career steps may be. Of course, it may seem a bit early to be asking ourselves that, with her sophomore album, Happier Than Ever, coming out within the last year. So let me elaborate on what questions we can ponder in regards to Billie's career. The first aspect I'd like to talk about is going to be her overall image, as we've seen quite a few shades of Billie's personality since her initial debut. Secondly, we're going to talk about saturation and sustainability. Lastly, we're going to actually put some speculation out there for what Billie's actual next steps will be as her career continues to grow. It should go without saying, but nothing in this video is meant to be a negative critique. I would simply like to point out a handful of things I've noticed in conjunction to the politics of the music industry, as well as the shape the industry seems to be taking now that we've entered a brand new decade of music and pop culture. If you're excited to hear more about the pop music world and all your faves' careers, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to stay up to date on a variety of music discussions. Be sure to also turn on post notifications so you can be the first to know when a new video is out. With Billie's first EP, Don't Smile at Me, released in 2017, we'd be presented with the foundational image she would expand upon with her debut album, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Don't Smile at Me introduced Billie's signature style she'd become known for, albeit with a focus on primary colors as well as a more vibrant aesthetic. While not necessarily reflected in the music videos, they're generally softer than what would succeed it. As Billie moved into her debut album, she would not necessarily forgo colorful photo shoots. However, her branding would become known for her darker, more moody appearance. We can even see in her red carpet appearances how these two eras opposed each other. What Billie offered was a soft transition in her image and style across these two album cycles. With her second album, Happier Than Ever, released last year, we can see a total 180 shift in Billie's image. Now, I'll be blunt, I didn't find this transition remotely surprising. After an era hallmarked with darkness and intriguingly creepy music videos, it only made sense that for her follow-up, she would change her look to become more softer, sweeter, and embracing warmer tones. This is extremely evident with the sepia coloring found across the Happier Than Ever era, as well as her blonde hair. This was the obvious move for Billie to take. Aesthetic changes with artists are the obvious indicator that a new era, album cycle, or project is coming or is within the works. With Billie having a natural progression with her era aesthetics, what would be the next approach for her? Even being blonde, she's retained remnants of her previous eras within her fashion style, but as stated, is leaning into a more refined and softer appearance overall. Billie has a distinct image that works for her, regardless of how it morphs or takes slight detours every now and then. We can assume she will retain her fashion sense, but one has to wonder how she will evolve from that, if she even will. As I've mentioned before, and what rings true, is most female artists reinvent themselves very drastically over the course of their career, even if their base remains constant. Do you think Billie will pull another 180 on us with her next album cycle, and what would you like to see from the aesthetics for her third record? Let me know down in the comments. With that, let's move on to our second point. With Billie's newly dyed brunette hair, it can be easy to assume a new era will be commencing. However, with her Happier Than Ever tour to commence soon, we can gather this isn't the case entirely. It was revealed last month that Billie's third album has already begun development, though the record is very much in its infancy. But within the last few years, her saturation and prevalence within the industry has remained constant. Merely looking at her single releases and touring, Billie has been non-stop since her debut dropped. And this doesn't even include live performances, public appearances, and awards she's raked in. It seems now more than ever, many modern artists are much more prevalent than they have been in the past. Whether it's singles and their dozens of remixes, persistent virality, or what have you, it appears we just see more of celebrities. Now, the counter argument to this is simply that in the age of social media, everything is interconnected, thus exposure is a lot more frequent, and allows artists to be more noticeable than they used to be. With the idea into play, when is too much publicity too much? While it may not always be the case, seldom artists these days have any type of prolonged hiatus anymore, which has its benefits, yet also its downsides. While constant and consistent exposure keeps you circulating within the industry, it also allows audiences to grow tired of you. This, of course, isn't a problem for avid fans and die-hard stans, but for the casual listener or general public, an overexposed artist may become quite tiresome. The element of surprise and anticipation for a new effort is always welcome. It rebuilds hype after you've been out of the public eye for a while. This, I don't think Billie Eilish has exactly done, not to the extent we've seen in the past, or to the lengths other artists have done. Now, one can argue that streaming numbers are solely indicative of an audience's reception to an artist and their work. While this may be a component, it isn't the whole story. Aside from what has been mentioned, what about the artist's own growth and health? The music industry, as with any industry, especially entertainment-wise, is heavily competitive. A lot of artists have to keep going, or else they're out of a job or won't produce the results their labels consistently expect them to put out. I see two different paths. You have an artist who can push out album after album, song after song, and perform non-stop. They can minimally evolve or do so progressively without being jarring. I find this the lesser of two evils, as while it's rigorous, there isn't such a demand to constantly be different. The other path is the same, however with total genre and image shifts with each succeeding effort. That appears to be the most taxing, as I'm sure there's a lot of work to find what type of sound and branding will stick with audiences. You can't be too different, too unexpected, yet still have to find a way to be new. Of course, this is primarily the frustration that female artists face. Male artists that deal with the pressures of artistic growth are far and few between. So when does the constant effort to remain in the spotlight lead to burnout? Whether Billie enjoys the constant go, 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 we know mental health is a huge component not only of her music, but also someone within the industry. The pressure is immense not only on themselves, but from outside forces as well. These are all themes touched on within Happier Than Ever. Tying into the aforementioned point strictly about image, how does she continue evolving when it comes to her musicality and lyrical content? Happier Than Ever offers more introspective thoughts from Billie, as well as a collection of tracks that don't offer the same radio potential seen on her debut. This, of course, is by no means a bad thing. With reflection on fame, her own identity, and various broader social issues, Billie breaks new ground that allows her to add self-aware star onto her resume. Her albums are deeply interpersonal, and there's no doubt her third will be just as such. But I do believe it begs the question, what is there left to write about? That's not to say there's no material anymore, but I'm looking at Billie's first two efforts as direct companions to each other. One is dark, one is light. One is production heavy, the other is more low-key. So when it comes to a third record, I believe there can be a lot of speculation offered up in terms of musical intention, song subject, and image branding. We can't predict what will come next in line with Billie's career. Well, we can ask ourselves and throw out some ideas. Of course, this is meant to be fun and not to serve as a negative lens on what she's accomplished so far. Before I give some of my own thoughts, let me ask you all what you would be interested in seeing next from Billie Eilish. Sounds, themes, visuals, etc. Billie has had 2 tours per each era. Don't Smile at Me, receiving the eponymously named tour, then the Where's My Mind tour. Her debut had the When We All Fall Asleep and the Where Do We Go tour, the latter being cancelled only after a few dates, understandably so. Will Billie be embarking on 2 tours to support Happier Than Ever? Her first 2 tours were 4 months apart from each other. The same goes for her 3rd and 4th planned tour. Both of the second tours of her eras were announced in November of the respective year of the first tour, with the Happier Than Ever tour planned to span until September of this year. It wouldn't be surprising if in November she were to announce a second tour for the album. With that assumption and given previous timeframes, we could see this possible tour begin in February or March and span until September to October, as her previous and current tour follow this time frame. Given that, a 3rd album could follow the year after that, possibly in the 1st or 2nd quarter of the year. But we also have to wonder, if the rollout of Happier Than Ever came about because of the cancellation of the Where Do We Go tour. We can't be sure if there would be any different time frame entirely if the Where Do We Go tour had proceeded like normal. Under the assumption we get a brand new album in 2023, what concepts would it lyrically follow? How would it sound? And how would it look? I'm going to merely spitball here. and leave out the broader conception for all of you in the comments. With Billie opting for a more subdued production style and Happier Than Ever, I think a third album could potentially find a sweet spot between that and When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? It seems like that would be the most logical move to make. We can broadly categorize both albums as pop, but her debut containing influences of hip-hop, industrial elements, as well as an almost avant art pop style. Happier Than Ever is much more down-tempo, containing minimalist jazz-inspired effects, alongside R&B and toned-down electro-pop. A third record could find a sweet spot in between this, but I just don't see us getting something quite as intense as some of the tracks found on her debut. With Billie's characteristically soft voice and pace tracks, a third album could potentially showcase her vocal prowess. We can definitely see her vocal ability live, and Happier Than Ever does a more suitable job of showcasing it. So her third album could have the potential to have tracks that really allow Billie to push herself. Now that's not to say she has anything to prove vocally, or needs to depart from her signature style, but this could just be an idea that she could explore. Whether it's ballads, more up-tempo tracks, or ravenous bridges, we won't know for the time being. So then, what could we anticipate for Billie's visual aesthetic and theme? This is the one I have the most trouble forecasting, as I've already explained. It could be interesting to see her explore a pastel color palette. We've gotten primaries, dark, and neutral, so something pastel or perhaps even lighter could be an interesting progression. I wouldn't imagine Billie drastically changing her signature fashion style despite how the coloring may change, but you may never know. We may have a few one-offs or certain photo shoots or music videos. With all that said, we may see Billie's third album arrive in the first half of 2023, based on what we've seen from her past release and tour scheduling. It would be interesting to see her find a balance of sound that falls in between her two albums, that really showcases powerful vocals without straying from her signature soft voice. And if she shifts her palette to something more subdued and pastel, that would be a very interesting change. But what do you expect next for Billie Eilish? Out of everything we've explored, what do you think would be the most ideal? What would be the most successful? Or what do you want from her? Let's talk about it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'd like to quickly shout out my channel members, Daniel Barron, Skyhawker, and Steven. If you'd like to help decide future video topics, get exclusive chat and comment badges, and receive shoutouts, then I'd love to have you as a channel member. Finally, if you love pop music and want to learn more about it, be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell for more future content on all your favorite pop stars.